Hi, I'm Amanda Morgan, and this is Not Just Cute, the podcast, where we discuss all kinds of topics relating to intentional whole child development and supporting the critical work of parents and teachers of young children. I was recently invited to speak for 10 minutes on the importance of early childhood education as part of a local private preschool's annual fundraiser. I was more than happy to do so, but I'll be honest, it's harder for me to speak for only 10 minutes than it is for me to do for an hour or two. What do you say to a room full of parents and community members? What's the message that you wish more people understood? What information would enable more people to support and defend childhood? Well, somehow I managed to whittle down what could easily have been a 2-hour presentation to about 10 minutes of more concise information. Honestly, in some ways, I think it actually takes more time to prepare a 10-minute speech than a 2-hour one. So between my desire to multitask and use what I've worked on, and the fact that I've had several people ask about having more resources that they can share with others after they hear those longer talks that I've given, I thought I'd do an encore of this shorter speech with a few adaptations for the format right here on the podcast. You can find show notes for this episode, including links to a few posts and series that go a bit more in depth into some of the concepts that I introduce here, online at notjustcute.com/podcast/episode 18. So now let's jump in. I love talking with people who share a passion for early childhood education. I'm lucky that I get to see that passion in early childhood teachers from all over through the work that I do. And if you're here listening, I think it's pretty safe to assume that you are passionate about early childhood education as well. So, why do we all value early childhood education so much? What is it that makes it so important? And what are we trying to accomplish in that season of life? From observing segments of our culture, it would appear that for some, the objective is to make our children more like adults. That the sooner they act like an adult and think like an adult, the better. And the first one there wins. If we can just get our kids to watch C-SPAN and read Tolstoy at bedtime and maybe do our taxes for fun, then we will have accomplished something great. There are pressures in our culture that seem to communicate to us that the purpose of childhood is simply to get through it as quickly as you can. Like it's a disease or a disorder that our children need to be cured of. As though the shorter the childhood, the more advanced the child. But science tells us the opposite. Across the various animal species, there is a correlation between the length of a species' childhood and the size of their brains in relation to their bodies. Those with longer childhood periods have relatively larger brains. They're more intelligent and are more flexible in their thinking. My favorite example of this comes from a speech given by developmental psychologist Dr. 𝐅𝐫𝐞𝐞, who points out that the crow is a rather intelligent bird. It's used in scientific studies on animal intelligence and has a long childhood period for a bird, about 2 years. The domesticated chicken, on the other hand, matures in a matter of months, and it's not too bright. Dr. 𝐅𝐫𝐞𝐞 said this difference in the length of their childhood period is the reason why the crow ends up on the cover of Science magazine and the chicken ends up in the soup pot. There is no prize for shortening childhood. It is not a disease to be cured. It's a developmental period that has a specific and valuable purpose. That period is set aside for both the time and experience needed for the complex human brain, body, and soul to form optimally. So, what is needed in that developmental period? Well, I'll get to some of that soon, but I wanted to take a short detour first to talk about the importance of a strong foundation. As was mentioned earlier, my family moved to this area fairly recently, and when we did, we built a new home. As anyone who's been through the home building process knows, the process of building a foundation is fascinating. It's a complex and expensive process that involves digging out the dirt, forming walls, pouring walls, reinforcing those walls, waterproofing those walls, not to mention a series of inspections all along the way. And then when all that work is done, we cover up those foundation walls with dirt. And then we say we can finally start to build the real house. As exciting as it is to see the house begin to form, the part where we move in and really live, the part we see and recognize as our homes as we drive by, we would never be so anxious to erect that house that we would skip building the foundation first, because we know that's what provides its stability and strength. The same is true for early education. As excited as we get to see those performance skills of reading and math computations, the house of education, so to speak, we should never be so anxious that we skip the work of the foundation. And just as the foundation of your home may be difficult to see, this work of foundational learning is often unrecognized as well, because it's usually dressed up as play. It's the songs and finger plays and stories, the messy sensory play and loud explorations with sound. It's the abstract thinking of playing dress up and the social negotiations that come with making and keeping friends. Foundation work isn't always easily recognized for what it is, but it is critical to everything that comes after it. If we try to skip ahead to get to the flashier, more exciting work of the home we can see without investing in the foundation first, we will surely come to regret it. I can and often do talk for a long time about what we hope to find in that foundation work, but my time is almost up. So let me just talk briefly about 3 interwoven critical pieces of that foundation. The first element is play. Play and learning are not two opposites in an either-or scenario. Children learn through play. Rather than seeing an either-or, I see method and outcome. And this method of play to promote the outcome of learning is highly effective. When children are in joyful, playful environments, brain chemicals are produced that actually promote brain growth. Dr. Stuart Brown calls play fertilizer for the brain and says we'd be crazy not to use it. Additionally, there is compelling correlational data connecting play to mental health and wellness, which is certainly something we have a vested interest in for our children and our future. The second piece of the foundation is attention to the whole child, to whole child development. It is tempting in this age of academic accountability for many educational entities to streamline their vision and focus only on the most efficient path to cognitive achievements. This, if it isn't tested, it doesn't count mentality. But as one theorist by the name of William Crane pointed out a few years ago, we run the risk of turning the child into a disembodied mind. That phrase has always gotten my attention and creates this vivid picture of jars of brains on a shelf. But no parent drops off a brain to school. They bring a child with a body and soul, part of a family and of a community. These children don't just need opportunities to build cognitive skills, but motor skills and social skills. They need to build creativity and empathy and curiosity. And the really exciting thing is that these varied components are interwoven in such a way that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Supporting the development of the whole child is much more effective and efficient than trying to teach individual academic skills in isolation. The last component is perhaps the most important: relationships. It is fascinating to me that through everything I've ever studied in child development, there is always this golden thread that weaves through all of it, connecting healthy human development with healthy human relationships. Our relationships with others can have a profound impact on every other aspect of our development. Further supporting the need for attention to relationships, research has shown that while academic skills seem to show a fade-out effect in just a matter of years, social skills, the ability to share, to listen to others, to communicate ideas, to problem solve, and to get along, those skills are predictive of positive outcomes even decades down the road. That academic foundation is still important, but not ever at the expense of supporting the development of social skills and healthy relationships with others. In addition to practicing those social skills and building those relationships with their peers, research tells us that every child needs at least one trusted, loving adult. Someone who loves them, listens to them, comforts them, plays with them, and converses with them. Someone who sees the good in them and brings it out of them. This is the single most powerful protective factor against negative childhood experiences. The little missteps and mistakes and the bigger, more traumatic experiences out there that we just can't predict or control. These relationships are at the core of true resiliency. As developmental psychologist Urie Bronfenbrenner is famous for saying, every child needs at least one adult who is irrationally crazy about him or her. Everyone needs at least one, but the more the better. Those positive relationships are powerful and transformational, and every one of us has the opportunity to be that someone for a child. I've worked with and observed teachers around the country, and I'll tell you, I have seen some miracle workers out there. I know they put a tremendous amount of love and care and work into incorporating all three elements we discussed today, and that they are doing the hard and important and sometimes unseen work of building foundations every single day. I want to thank them and to thank you for being builders and for contributing to, supporting, and protecting the extraordinary work of children and of childhood. In my opinion, it's some of the best and most important work we can ever be a part of. Thanks again for listening to Not Just Cute, the podcast. You can find show notes, including a download of a developmental guide for recognizing and supporting the multifaceted aspects of whole child development at notjustcute.com/podcast/episode 18. I'm Amanda Morgan. You can read more on my blog and sign up for the Not Just Cute newsletter at notjustcute.com. And follow me on Facebook. That's facebook.com/notjustcute. Thanks for listening today, and thank you for standing up for children and for childhood.